One thing that I miss about my childhood is going to an arcade. Sure, I've gone a couple of times since I've been an adult, but they don't seem to capture that magical feeling that they used to. Walking in and smelling that stale air, feeling the sweat on the buttons and sticks on the machines, that weird stain in the corner that never seemed to go away no matter how many times they cleaned it. It always felt like home. Where I grew up, the best arcade that I knew about was called Scandia. I went there way more often than any other arcade because it had all my favorites. There was this game that was kinda like Crazy Taxi, but it was called Smashing Drive, which was absolutely insane. Of course, who could forget smacking around kids in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, though I was the one that was getting smacked most of the time. Hey, who wasn't mashing the buttons until a super move came out? Also, an all-time classic was the Star Wars Trilogy cabinet. It took me years to beat Boba Fett, and even longer to beat Darth Vader and blow up the Death Star. Many a quarter were plunged into this machine, feeding and feeding it until it wrung me dry. While I cherish all these games, none stuck with me as much as one standout cabinet. But this one wasn't where I usually went. In fact, this game to my knowledge was only at one place in my area. Even catching a glimpse of it was almost as rare as finding a leprechaun at the end of a rainbow, or winning one of those Trix yogurt sweepstakes. Yeah, you remember those?
Swirl your way to a grand prize of $10,000.
Recessed deep into the heart of Berkeley, California, on the corner of Tough Guy Street and Watch Your Back Alley, there stood Laval's Pizzeria, and inside there was Ballistics. Ballistics is like if NASCAR and F-Zero had a baby, and then the baby decided to play only on Final Destination with Fox only with no items on. Ha! It's a racing game at its core, but this isn't no Initial D Fast and the Furious baby bullshit. This is Ballistics, where the only way to go is straight and the only speed to go is fast. I don't mean like golden mushroom fast, I mean like over 1,000 miles per hour fast. You get so cracked out that the actual audio cuts out as you break the sound barrier and it feels like you're going at ludicrous speed. I said that you only go straight, which is sort of true, but essentially you're playing in a tube where you can maneuver left and right to avoid obstacles. Here's a real-world representation that I expertly created in the lab to show you. What also made this game stand out is the actual cabinet itself. Look at this thing! Are we playing a game here about to go into the fucking Matrix? And like I said earlier, I hardly ever played this game. Maybe 2 or 3 times at most when I was around 5. The fact that I can remember all this nearly 20 years later should tell you that this thing was not messing around. Something that I didn't know about until recently was that Ballistics was actually a PC game first before it came to the arcade. It was originally released in 2001 and was developed by Grin and published by Zycat Interactive. It wasn't until 2002 when it was released into arcades. Thankfully, I was able to track down a copy of the game on Amazon. I was expecting just the disc, but what I got was an unopened copy of the game, manual, box, and only all for $10. Talk about a deal. I wish that old Pokemon games cost that much. Those bastards go up $10 after a while. So that's the footage that you're seeing here. To be honest, I can't remember the exact differences between the two versions, but after looking at footage, it looks like the differences are subtle, with the arcade version being tweaked to fill a more traditional arcade role. I swear, this has to be in the top 10 coolest arcade cabinets ever. Its design alone is what drawed me to it all those years ago. But that's enough about the background. Let's discuss the game as a whole and see what the PC version has to offer. The first aspect that pops out about this game is the aesthetic. The main menu gives off a cold and clean feeling, which emphasizes its future setting. This game also has a pretty cool techno-sounding soundtrack, which puts you in the right mood to participate in this high-octane race. Before every race, the announcer says a quick little snippet about what track you're on, which also helps establish what kind of world the game takes place in. It's set on Earth in 2090, and the places you race at include the United States, Siberia, Tokyo, and Belize. The designs of them all are great, and I especially like the Siberia and Belize levels because you get to see the surrounding environment outside the track. As far as I can tell, there are only 7 maps in the game, but since there's so few, it gives you a good opportunity to memorize them so you can avoid the obstacles and go faster each time. At first, all I wanted to do was just hold the boost button and go, but if you end up crashing, you have to start the whole race over. This makes the checkpoints you get feel redundant because it's not like you continue there if you crash. And trust me, you will crash a lot. On the easiest difficulty, your worst enemy is yourself. The bots pose no threat at all, and I found myself lapping them on almost every track. This all changed though when I unlocked the pro difficulty. The bots are now much better, and I found myself falling short of first more often. Also on higher difficulties, your speeder can detach from the track, leaving you floating in the air while other racers pass you by. To stay attached, you have to drive along the outer wall so you can have as much momentum as possible. This adds a whole new element to the game, and I remember this happening to me a lot as a kid. Since the bots are more of a threat, I felt like I was pushed to go even faster. Ballistics definitely doesn't want you to go slow. Once you do find a moment to slow down, you can check out the shop to customize your pilot and your vehicle. The paint jobs are all pretty sick, and it's even better when you see your character at the start of the race ready to face off with the other opponents. Other than that, there are several upgrades that you can make to your ride, giving it better speed, cooling, and other things of that nature. It's too bad that I couldn't find any real people to show it off to. You mean to tell me that people aren't queuing for a 2001 game in 2021? Holy crap, I just realized that this is over 20 years old. Well, in any case, the customization is another great feature about this game, even though its impacts on the gameplay are minor at best. It was interesting finding out that Ballistics was made for the PC before it was released into arcades, because it seems like it would work drastically better in an arcade setting. The number of maps that are available work great as a quick campaign, but only having 7 for a home version is very low. Even the first Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo had 20 tracks, and that came out 9 years before. I know that not every racing game has to feature crazy items and power-ups, but I feel like Ballistics could have benefited from having a little more. There are a few, like a super booster and cooler, but more would have been nice. Like maybe a power-up that allowed you to not detach from the track for a short period. What we have here feels more bare bones. However, feeling bare bones for a PC version does not mean that it would have felt this way in an arcade. Much of what makes a great arcade game is the experience, and not necessarily the longevity or amount of content that the game has. Like I said earlier, the 7 tracks would have felt fine in an arcade. The fantastic Star Wars Racer arcade game had only 4 tracks, and that was a must-play for me every time I went out. Plus, if there were multiple cabinets, you could race against one another. As I previously stated in the beginning of the video, the look of this cabinet alone made people want to play it. Ballistics is a fine example of a game that is superior in the arcade than in the home. The main reason I wanted to make a video about this game is because I've never heard anyone talk about it, ever. It even took me a long time to figure out what Ballistics was even called. I had to keep looking up futuristic motorcycle racing game or different things like that. Ballistics is nothing short of a hidden gem, and I think it should be remembered as having one of the best arcade presences in history. I'm curious to find out just how many cabinets are there out there in the wild nowadays. All I can say is, if you find yourself standing in front of one of these machines, try it out. You will not be disappointed. So that wraps up the video for today. I hope that you all liked it, and I appreciate the time you took out of your schedule to watch it. I'm sorry that this is a shorter video than what I usually do, but I just felt like I needed to get this one off my chest. But what about you? Leave your favorite arcade game in the comments below. I always look forward to reading them and seeing how everybody's doing. So with that being said, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next one.